Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive. We're going to be talking about Mozart today.
Mozart.
Yeah. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. But, not just like the guy who wrote all the famous tunes, but trying to really understand the person behind the music.
Right.
And I think we've got some great sources here that are going to, reveal some things that maybe you didn't know about him. And we're talking about Mozart's struggles, his triumphs, and how those things, come together to create the masterpieces we know and love today, right?
Yeah.
So get ready for some surprises because Mozart's life was anything but simple.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we think, oh, Mozart, he's this,
child prodigy,
this genius, this prodigy.
Yeah.
But did you know, for example, that he was practically a rock star who loved luxury, but he was also constantly broke?
Yeah.
Like, how does that even work?
Right.
And then his relationship with his dad was, let's just say, complicated.
Complicated is a good word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I think is so fascinating about looking into Mozart's life is that, it wasn't just this straight line from bright genius child to this celebrated composer.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. It seems like it was this constant push and pull between his incredible talent, which we can't deny, and then these very human challenges.
That's right.
That he had to deal with.
I think that's one of the things that I think we can all relate to with Mozart is that he's lauded as this sort of singular genius, but he's also a person who had to deal with the same kinds of challenges that many of us face.
Yeah, absolutely.
In our own lives, and I think looking at those challenges is what really shapes how we see his music.
Totally, yeah.
It's not just a celebration of his genius, but it's an exploration of how those factors impacted his work.
Okay, so let's get into some of that.
Yeah, let's do it.
One of the first things that really jumped out from these sources was his dad, Leopold. He was clearly very devoted to Wolfgang's talent.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this guy was, really pushing him, but also incredibly controlling.
Absolutely.
Imagine, you're just a little kid, you're 6 years old.
Right.
You're on tour across Europe performing for royalty.
It's crazy.
It's intense.
It was a nonstop concert schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that for a 6-year-old.
Okay.
That kind of pressure and exposure at such a young age, clearly it influenced his development as a musician,
Right.
He got incredible skills. But it also raises the question, was anyone looking out for young Mozart's well-being amidst all that? Amidst
all the pressure and the craziness.
Right.
Yeah.
This was the 1700s, so...
Different times.
I think it's safe to say that, the well-being of a child was not always the top priority.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't just the pressure of performing, right?
Right.
The sources mentioned that he was sick a lot.
Oh, constantly.
He was dealing with, fevers and exhaustion.
Yeah.
It sounds like that constant travel really took a toll on him.
Well, again, thinking about a child whose immune system isn't fully developed,
right,
and being constantly on the move,
right,
exposed to different environments, potential illnesses. I mean, it could have weakened his health for life.
Really?
Yeah, and sadly, it seems like Mozart's health often took a back seat to the demands of performance.
Right.
The show must go on, right?
Yeah, the show must go on. It makes you wonder if anyone, really sat down and considered the long-term effects of that kind of intense lifestyle on a young child, right?
Absolutely.
And it seems like this theme of pressure and conflict, especially with his father, kind of continues as Mozart gets older.
Well, absolutely. As Mozart matures, the friction with Leopold, his father, really increases.
Okay.
At first it was maybe more about career choices.
Okay.
Leopold wanted him in a stable court position.
Oh.
Whereas Mozart craved the freedom to compose what he wanted, how he wanted.
Okay.
So it wasn't just about a job.
Right.
It was really a clash.
So it was deeper than that.
Yeah.
It was a clash of values.
It was a clash of values, absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting.
And this wasn't just a professional disagreement. This
Right.
was deeply personal.
Yeah.
So imagine how emotionally draining that must have been for Mozart, who clearly loved his father.
Yeah.
But also felt stifled
By his control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that tension, I think, culminates in Mozart's very risky move to Vienna in 1781.
Okay.
He leaves the security of Salzburg to become a freelance composer.
Wow. Which is a move I think a lot of aspiring artists even today can probably relate to.
Absolutely.
Like taking that leap, leaving a safe harbor to go out and
to go out on your own and make your own way.
Yeah, make your own way.
Yeah, and it was a huge gamble. I mean, in Vienna, Mozart wasn't tied to a patron who guaranteed him a steady income.
Right.
He was essentially betting on himself.
Yeah.
Betting on his talent and his ability to attract commissions in a very, very competitive market.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, this is where it gets really interesting to me because you've got this genius composer.
Right.
And it sounds like he was living a pretty lavish lifestyle.
Right.
Like, he had a taste for the finer things.
He did.
And yet he's constantly broke. Constantly.
That's not even possible.
It's the paradox of Mozart.
Okay.
He had a taste for the finer things in life. Beautiful clothes, nice apartments, loved to entertain.
Right.
But he also had very little financial discipline.
Okay.
So
he wasn't good at managing money.
Not really, no. And unlike composers who had court appointments, his income was unpredictable.
Right.
He would get a commission here, commission there.
Yeah.
Sometimes the money would be good, sometimes not so good.
Okay.
So imagine the pressure
Yeah.
of having to constantly secure new commissions
Right.
just to keep up with your lifestyle and your expenses.
Yeah, it's almost like a modern day artist trying to make it in like
It really is.
the gig economy.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how that financial stress played into his creative process, right? Did it fuel his creative energy? Did it make him more experimental or more desperate to please patrons?
That's a great question.
Like, what was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know for sure.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think it must have been a factor.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
And we see these contrasts even in his personal life too, right? And, I mean, he falls in love with Constanza, marries her.
Right.
Despite his father's disapproval, by the way, which just adds another layer.
Yeah, they weren't thrilled with the match.
No. But he does it anyway.
He does it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it seems like managing their finances kind of falls more on her shoulders.
Yeah, I think Constanzi's role is often overlooked in Mozart's story.
Right.
Here's this young woman who is thrust into the world of a celebrity composer, having to deal with his unpredictable income.
Yeah.
His sometimes, shall we say, extravagant spending habits. And on top of that, she's trying to create a stable home life.
Right.
And I think that really humanizes Mozart. Even geniuses need someone to ground them.
Need someone to help keep it all together.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't just financial worries that they faced.
Right? No, it was much more than that.
Oh.
Tragically, they lost 4 of their 6 children.
Oh, wow.
In infancy.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That's just devastating.
Devastating.
Even in a time when, child mortality was tragically common.
It was common, but, common doesn't make it any less.
Right. Of course not.
Devastating.
Yeah.
And you have to imagine the emotional toll that takes on anyone, let alone someone like Mozart who poured his emotions into his music.
Right. Who was so expressive in his art.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. And while we can only speculate, I mean, it makes you wonder how those losses impacted his composition. We tend to think of Mozart's music as joyful and celebratory, but maybe there's a deeper layer of melancholy there, informed by those experiences.
Right, like a bittersweetness, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that that behind the genius, there was a man,
absolutely,
a human who experienced the full spectrum of human emotions. Right. And I think that's important to remember.
Absolutely.
It's amazing to me how we can look back on on a historical figure like Mozart, and we think we know him, right?
Right.
And then you read these sources, and you realize just how much more there is to the story.
Yeah.
We left off talking about the personal challenges he faced.
Absolutely.
The financial stress, the strained relationship with his dad, the unimaginable grief of losing his kids.
Right.
But alongside all of that, there was this incredible creative output.
It's hard to fathom how those two sides coexisted.
It really is. And I think, what's so fascinating here is that it seems like Mozart's struggles didn't stifle his creativity.
Right.
And in many ways, they seem to fuel it.
Yeah.
It's like his music became a channel for processing those really complex emotions.
Yeah.
And this is where, we see Mozart truly revolutionizing the world of music.
Yeah.
He's not just composing pretty tunes.
Right.
He's pushing the boundaries of what music could express.
So it's not just that he was a genius.
Right.
But that his life experiences infused his work with this incredible depth.
That's right.
Can we talk about his operas specifically?
Yeah.
Because works like, The Marriage of Figaro or Don Giovanni, those are still performed today. Centuries later.
Right. What made them so groundbreaking?
Well, I think Mozart's operas were revolutionary in several ways.
Okay.
First, the way he combined music and drama. It wasn't just about beautiful singing.
Right.
It was about psychological depth.
Okay.
His characters were flawed. They were complex.
Yeah.
They were relatable,
Right.
They weren't just singing about love or loss.
Right.
They were grappling with real life dilemmas,
Right.
social issues, their own internal struggles.
Interesting. So it's like he took the traditional opera format and injected it with this vibrant realism and made the stories and the emotions so much more immediate.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And engaging.
Yes, precisely. And to achieve that, he had to innovate musically.
Okay.
Take, for example, the concept of an aria in opera.
Right.
That's that solo vocal piece where a character is expressing their feelings.
Right.
Mozart's arias, they weren't just pretty melodies. They were psychologically charged.
Okay.
Expressing a character's inner turmoil.
Yeah.
Their hopes, their doubts, all through the nuances of the music.
That's so cool. So it's like
each
aria became this mini drama in itself.
It really did.
Yeah. And thinking about the drama in Mozart's own life, it makes you wonder how much of his own emotional landscape found its way into those areas.
I think that's a great question and one that musicologists continue to explore today.
Yeah.
But even beyond the areas, Mozart's operas were groundbreaking in their use of the orchestra.
Oh, okay.
The overture, for instance, it wasn't just an introduction to the opera. It was often like a preview of the drama to come, foreshadowing themes and emotions that would unfold throughout the story.
So even before the curtain rises, the audience is being primed for what was about to happen.
That's right.
Musically and emotionally.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And remember, he wasn't just composing these operas, he was often conducting them as well.
Oh, wow.
He was involved in every aspect of the production, from casting singers to shaping the musical interpretation.
That's a lot of control.
It is a lot of control.
Yeah.
And that level of control allowed him to really, ensure that his artistic vision was realized on stage.
But sadly, as we learned from the sources, even Mozart's genius wasn't always appreciated.
And unfortunately not.
In his own time, right? By the late 1780s, his popularity was waning. He was facing increasing competition from younger composers like Antonio Salieri.
Yeah, that's right.
What led to this decline?
Well, I think several factors were at play. Musical tastes were evolving.
Yeah.
Audiences were looking for something new.
Yeah.
Something that perhaps reflected the changing political and social climate of the time. And while Mozart was undoubtedly a musical innovator,
right,
he wasn't immune to the fickleness.
Public taste.
My public taste, it's kind of like fashion, right? What's trendy one day might be outdated the next.
Totally.
And in Mozart's case, there was a sense that his style was becoming a bit too old-fashioned for some audiences. They were drawn to Salieri's lighter, more accessible compositions.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it also didn't help that Mozart was notoriously bad with money.
Right.
And his financial troubles only worsened as commissions became scarcer, and he was forced to rely on loans and charity.
So even Mozart wasn't above the pressures of the marketplace.
He wasn't.
He was a genius, but he also had to compete for gigs.
Absolutely.
Please, patrons.
Yeah.
And adapt to the tastes of the time.
He did.
It makes his story feel much more relatable.
It does.
Than in today.
It really does. It reminds us that even the greatest artists are products of their time and place, subject to the same economic realities as everyone else.
Yeah, that's what.
And in Mozart's case, those financial pressures likely compounded the stress that he was already experiencing from his declining health and the tragic loss of his children.
And it all culminates in his untimely death.
It does.
At the age of 35.
35 years old.
It's still hard to believe.
It is.
That someone so young, so talented, could be gone so soon.
Right.
And the mystery surrounding his death, too.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the different theories circulating even today,
still
just adds to the intrigue.
It does.
There's something about Mozart's story that I think continues to capture our imagination.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the combination of his genius and his struggles, the way his life seems to embody both the triumph and the tragedy.
I think that's a big part of it.
Of human existence.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just the enduring power of his music.
I mean, it's hard to deny that.
Which transcends time and language.
It does.
And just speaks directly
to the
human heart.
Human heart,
Yeah. It's like we're drawn to Mozart.
Yeah.
Not just because of his brilliance.
Right.
But because we sense this kindred spirit in him.
I think so too.
Someone who experienced life's joys and sorrows just as intensely as we do.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah. And I think that's what makes exploring Mozart's life so rewarding. It's not just about understanding his music. It's about understanding the man behind the music, the complex, flawed, yet undeniably brilliant individual who left such an indelible mark on the world.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Like we've been unpacking a lot about Mozart's life.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that while the drama and the personal challenges are fascinating, it's easy to forget that at the heart of it all is the music.
That's right.
Right.
And while we can certainly appreciate Mozart's genius by simply listening to his work, knowing the context of his life, the struggles, the triumphs, the emotional roller coaster he was on, it just adds another layer of depth to that listening experience.
So it's not just about like recognizing his talent, but it's trying to understand how his experiences might have shaped the very notes he put on paper.
Absolutely.
We talked a little bit about his operas earlier.
We did.
But I'd love to kind of dive a little deeper into what made his instrumental music so revolutionary.
Well, Mozart's instrumental works, particularly his symphonies and concertos, they really pushed the boundaries of form and expression in a way that was truly groundbreaking.
So how so? Like what do you mean by that?
Well, he wasn't just following the rules. He was rewriting them.
Okay.
He was creating music that was both technically brilliant and emotionally charged.
Can you give us an example of that? Like for someone who's maybe familiar with some of the popular Mozart pieces, but isn't a musical expert, like what should we be listening for to really grasp his genius?
Well, let's take the symphony for instance. Think of it as a large-scale musical journey with several movements, each with its own character and emotional arc.
Right.
Mozart's symphonies were known for their incredible clarity their balanced structure, and the way he developed melodic ideas, building tension and release, creating drama and beauty within this framework.
So it's like he's telling a story without words.
Exactly.
Using the different instruments and the musical themes to create this whole emotional landscape.
That's exactly right. And he did this with a level of sophistication, technical skill that was unmatched at the time. Well, listen, for example, to his later symphonies. Like the Jupiter Symphony.
Okay.
You'll hear intricate melodies weaving together, unexpected harmonic shifts.
Okay.
Moments of pure sonic brilliance that are both intellectually stimulating and emotionally moving.
It's almost like he was juggling multiple ideas at once.
Right.
But somehow keeping it all
together.
Balanced and beautiful.
That's right. And that's part of his genius.
Yeah.
He was a master of form and structure, able to create music that was both complex and accessible, challenging, and deeply satisfying.
His piano concertos are another good example.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, Mozart was a virtuoso pianist himself.
Right.
So he wrote for the instrument in a way that showcased its full potential.
And from what I read in these sources, his concertos weren't just about technical brilliance.
Right.
They were about showcasing the emotional range of the piano, almost like giving it a voice.
Precisely. He used the piano's ability to play both soaring melodies and delicate, intimate passages to create these incredible dialogues between the soloist and the orchestra,
Yeah.
Moments of drama, tenderness, virtuosity, all woven together.
So it's like listening to a conversation.
Yeah.
But instead of words, it's all expressed.
It's all expressed through the music.
Through the music.
And that's the power of Mozart's music, I think. Whether it's opera, symphony, concerto, he was able to connect with listeners on an emotional level.
Yeah.
To make us feel something, to transport us to another place in time.
And it's fascinating to think
that,
centuries after his death,
I know,
his music still has that power to move us, to make us laugh, to make us cry.
It's incredible.
To make us feel everything in between.
That's the mark of a true genius.
Yeah.
To create something that transcends time and place. That speaks to the very core of the human experience.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on.
You think so too?
This deep dive has been a journey, not just into Mozart's music, but into his life, his struggles, his triumphs.
Absolutely.
and the complex tapestry of influences that shaped his genius.
It's really remarkable.
Hopefully, for you, the listener, this dive has not just provided information, but has sparked a curiosity, to go deeper, to listen with new ears, and to discover the layers of meaning and emotion that Mozart poured into his work.
Couldn't agree more.
We may never fully understand the mystery of his genius, but I think that's part of the allure. There's always more to explore, more to discover.
Absolutely.
In the world of Mozart.
In the world of Mozart, that's the beauty of it. Yeah. It's an invitation to keep listening, to keep learning, and to keep being amazed by the power of music to connect us across time and space.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.